My name is Vic Farley here at the City of San Jose's Office of Economic Development. Welcome to you all to today's webinar that will focus on the SBA and the soon to be rolled out Paycheck Protection Program and other features of programs that the SBA will be rolling out as well in the next few weeks. I'm delighted to have with us today Julie Close, the Field Director for the Bay Area from the Small Business Administration. She's our guest speaker, along with Dennis King, Chief Executive of the Small Business Development Center here in the city of San Jose, who does a fantastic job at assisting businesses. Bianca Gronvest is here from the Small Business Majority, and she is really in the thick of things in being an advocate for small business across California, and is very well versed in a number of the stateside initiatives like relief funds. And we have Ali Lopez, who is the programs director as well for the Small Business Development Center here in San Jose, who works closely with Dennis. So we are your panel for today, and we have about an hour. Our plan is to enable Julie to give quite a lengthy slide deck presentation that may take somewhere between 20 and 30 minutes. And so we have a Q&A box that we use. And so for the over 100 people now that are with us, please take the opportunity to put your question into the Q&A. And so we've got enough time. We're going to try and leave ourselves about 30 minutes to respond to questions and answers. If we can't get to you, I will leave you my email address so you can send me a question and I'll do my best to respond to it within the next 24 hours. When we held a webinar last week, this went on for an hour and a half. We had that many questions, and Dennis and Ali and myself attempted to answer everything, but I think it's fair to say that was a pretty exhausting experience. So we want to be more efficient this time. So it's a lot easier just for me to provide an email address for you to contact me. You do not have to take any notes. This webinar will be recorded, and the slide deck that Julie will go through will be made available to everyone who registered. And I've also got some supplemental information on lenders available to you in the city that lent under round one that I've been able to source directly from the SBA. So again, we've got more information to provide. So please don't feel you need to take a lot of notes. Relax into this. Have a think about any question you would like to ask, and we'll do our best in the hour that we have to satisfy everyone's needs and try and respond in as full a way as we can whilst we go forward. So that's enough from me. I'd like to introduce Julie from the Small Business Administration. Over to you and your PowerPoint. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vic. And thank you to the City of San Jose and the team for inviting me to speak today. So we definitely appreciate the opportunity to present the information. And let me try to talk and share my screen at the same time. Let's see. For those of you who've listened to some of these before or were participating with PPP maybe in round one last year, you'll know that the information comes out in waves, right? Things are either updated or new processes and things are unfolded. So similarly, that's happening in round two as well. And this isn't an effort to not delay the process, right? We want to be able to make the programs available and open and at least get the application side started. And then gives us time to update the forgiveness and the other components that come secondary. So again, everything I'm talking about is accurate as I know it as of this moment, but more information is definitely still coming out. So I always like to refer people back to our website if they want to get the latest information. And I will talk to you a little bit about everything that I know of that's available and some of the timelines and things that I'm aware of and when other things might come down the pike. I know they're on the phone here too, just a plug also to our resource partners like the SBDC. You know, this is a lot of information and there's a lot of different programs out there, you know, from the state, local programs, and it's a lot to process and digest as a business owner. especially right now when you've got, you know, a lot of troubling issues on your mind as you're trying to keep your business afloat. So please leverage these resource partners. Let them, you know, take a meeting with you and sit down and figure out, you know, which of these programs might be most advantageous for you and in your business situation, so that you can make sure that you are applying for the programs that really are going to really help you through what is still a very, very rough period for many types of businesses. So let's jump right in. And I apologize, we'll go a little quickly through this, but we are all available to help you with this afterwards as well. So the types of assistance under the financial assistance umbrella that we have available, I like to put in two buckets: the debt deferment and relief bucket, and then also the loans and grants bucket. So the debt deferment and relief, we're continuing the programs that existed before. So if you had an existing SBA disaster loan, and I'm talking pre-COVID, so if you were a victim of a wildfire or some of the other things that may have happened prior to COVID, and you have an existing disaster loan, your payments were automatically deferred for a year. We are now deferring them for yet another 3 months. So this is happening automatically to you. You don't have to enroll in this. This will automatically show up on your monthly notice. Secondarily, the SBA debt relief program. Now this is where SBA was paying principal and interest originally for 6 months on existing SBA debt. And that could be in the 7A program, it could be the 504 program, or even the micro lending program. That program had sunset last year. It has been reauthorized and reappropriated, so there will be an additional 3 months on this program. Exactly how that is going to work, we're waiting for the notice to come out from our Office of Capital Access in DC. So as soon as we have that information available, we will share the details on that one, but that program is being extended of sorts for yet another 3 months as well. So the grants and loans bucket. So we still have the economic injury disaster loan, or the EIDL loan. That's the only program that never went away, so to speak. That has continued. It is still continuing, and in fact has been expanded through the rest of this calendar year, through December 31st. So if you have not yet applied for an EIDL loan, you still have the ability to do so. And just as a quick refresher, the EIDL loans were the working capital loans that are direct from SBA, and they are for any business, small business or nonprofit that's been adversely impacted by COVID. These loans are, as it stands today, for up to $150,000. They carry, for small businesses, a 3.75% interest rate and a term of 30 years. So it's a very favorable loan. You get an automatic 1-year deferral payment on principal and interest with this loan as well. And again, the application is online on our website, and you can go in and apply directly through SBA. The new piece, or resurrected piece, if you want, is what we used to call the EIDL Advance. That was the up to $10,000 forgivable loan, or grant, essentially, to businesses. This has been reauthorized in the most recent legislation. It has some twists to it, though. So it's not the same program. It's not necessarily a $10,000 grant to anybody who applies. It is a more targeted audience this time. And it's something that has not yet been deployed. We are still waiting for our disaster team to provide us with the details on this and how it will be deployed, but it is coming out soon. And it is also my understanding that if you were an EIDL Advance recipient and did not get the full $10,000 and you qualify under this new program, again, it's a much more targeted eligibility program. What SBA will do is, if you meet those parameters, did not originally receive $10,000, SBA will go back and kind of make you whole, so to speak, pay you the difference between what you received and the $10,000. Again, this is for businesses that are going to qualify for this targeted EIDL grant. And the details and the specifics on what the eligibility criteria will be for that are still forthcoming. But I did wanted to put that out there to watch for that one as well. And then before we talk about PPP, I also just wanted to give a quick update on the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant. So this is brand new, and this was as a result of the most recent legislation, and it will be a grant directly from SBA to people who, businesses who qualify. So these are going to be businesses that are either live venue operators, promoters, theatrical producers, performing arts, can be museums, zoos, aquariums as well, movie theaters. So small businesses that fit these categories can be eligible for the grant program. The details and the parameters on this are forthcoming. We are going to have a webinar tomorrow. That's January 14th. It'll be tomorrow. It says 3 p.m. here, but that's 3 p.m. Eastern, so it's actually noon here Pacific. And they're going to talk about the program and provide some updates and provide just some information. When we distribute out this PowerPoint, this is an active link to the registration page if you want to go register. Registration might be full, however, they are recording it. And if you sign up and it's full, you'll be placed on a waiting list so that you can get a copy of the link to the recorded webinar after the fact. So again, this is still under development, but there is going to be a webinar tomorrow to kind of talk through some of the specifics of this program. But today, let's talk more about PPP. So there's some new terminology that I wanted to introduce you to and make you aware of. So we have what's called the first draw loan and the second draw loan. So the first draw PPP loan, when we say that, we're referring to basically the very first time someone applies for and receives the PPP loan. So this could have happened in 2020 for many people, or maybe you never applied for a PPP loan and now in January you're going to apply for the first time. That would be considered your first draw loan. The second draw loan is obviously the second time someone applies. They've successfully received the first round and used those funds, and now they're applying for a second loan. So both of these programs, the first draw and the second draw, opened this week, but they opened in a more limited capacity. So right now, started Monday for the first draw, and then today for the second draw, community financial institutions, CFIs, were the designated institutions or for financial organizations that are allowed to submit applications to SBA for PPP. So again, the program is open, but it is limited this week right now to organizations that fall under this community financial institutions umbrella. So those are our CDFIs, our minority depository institutions, CDCs, and micro lenders, participating organizations in these categories. And there are a fair number of them that even in the Greater Bay Area that were offering the PPP, at least in the first round, that you can reach out to see if they're offering it again during this round. The program, like I said, it just opened this week. We will open to all other participating lenders, but I do not have the date certain as to when that might happen. Presumably it'll be next week, but don't quote me on that because we have not yet received the date. But right now, the community financial institutions have the pipeline open for them to submit the PPP, take in the applications, and then submit the information to SBA. The program is legislated to stay open through March 31st of 2021, as it stands right now. So let's talk a little bit more the PPP program. In general, the type of entities eligible to participate or apply for loans remains the same, but it has been expanded. So not only is it, all small businesses and self-employed individuals and government or independent contractors, nonprofits list has been expanded. So now it includes 501c6s, which are typically typically chambers of commerce. It also includes different types of cooperatives, You can see here housing cooperatives, electrical and telephone cooperatives, and it also includes destination marketing organizations. This is a new category. These can be nonprofit or quasi-governmental groups, but they typically focus on marketing and promoting, a certain geographic area, like almost think of them like a tourism bureau or a tourism organization. But you'll see with this screen, the way I've outlined this, the caveat on those, the cooperatives and the destination marketing organization, is that they can only have a maximum of 300 employees in order to be eligible for PPP. News organizations was also an expanded category, and they are delineated by NAICS codes. So I've entered on here, it's essentially the NAICS codes that are starting with 51. For all of these categories, except for the two that have the caveats about the 300 employees, for the rest of them, you basically have to meet the small business size standard that SBA has provided. And for all of these, the entity had to have been in operation as of February 15th of 2020. So unfortunately, businesses that were created after that date would not be eligible for this particular program. The loan terms remain the same if you're familiar with the program. So you still have this concept of a covered period. And what that means is when you get the funds, this is the time period you have to spend the funds. So it's basically a minimum of 8 weeks or a maximum of 24 or somewhere in between. You, as the recipient of these funds, can decide which of the time period makes sense to you and from that 8-week to 24-week interval. Interest rate is still 1%, and the term is now 5 years for any loans that are not forgiven or portions that are not forgiven. Still, there's no collateral requirement or personal guarantee required. SBA is providing 100% guarantee to these lenders. You will still need to apply through a participating lender. And the concept of the 60-40 split, spending at least 60% of the proceeds on payroll and no more than 40% of the proceeds on non-payroll costs is still important if you want to have this loan forgiven. So that is still a requirement. A lot of people want to know about how they calculate the amount that they're eligible for. And in the interest of time today to get through this information, I wanted to direct you to a document we have on our website that will help you figure out how you calculate how much you can be eligible for under the program. It's essentially 2.5 times your average monthly payroll costs. And there's some step-by-step guidelines on how you figure that out, and the guidelines are based on the type of business. So there's lots of different scenarios. It might not cover everybody, but it hopefully can serve as a really useful guide for people trying to make that determination. The types of expenses largely stay the same as well, especially for the payroll costs. No change, excuse me, in that category. So it's, your compensation, any sort of benefits you may pay employees, and state and local taxes that might be assessed on compensation. The non-payroll cost is where I saw, again, another expansion, more items that can be included in this bucket. So in addition to the mortgage interest, rent, and utilities, we now have operations expenditures, and these are things, if there's software programs or accounting services or other operational type things that you spend money on that you need to operate your business. Similarly, supplier costs have also been now included, but again, these are supposed to be essential supplies and things that you need to operate your business on an ongoing basis. Worker protection expenditures. So this can be if you need to buy PPE for your employees, if you need to put up or buy guards or erect physical barriers or other things, all in the name of protecting the workers in your business and your office space. You can utilize the loan proceeds to help you pay for some of those costs. And also property damage that's due to any of the civil unrest or the disturbances that largely took place last summer. So these are new buckets of expenses, but again, please remember that if you want to have the loan forgiven, you can't spend more than 40% of the loan proceeds on these types of expenses. So the second draw loans, the second PPP loan. So this is largely the same, but it does have some slightly different eligibility criteria. So it is still the same types of organizations that are eligible. And then obviously you have to have gotten the first loan in order to qualify for the second. And you have to have spent all the money. So you don't have to go through the forgiveness.
I think, Julie, you've frozen up a bit. We'll give you a few seconds to see if you're okay. Just for the 151 participants here with us live, we're going through the presentation that Julie Close has for the SBA. I'm responding to questions as and when they come up in the Q&A as best as I can. And there are questions that come up that I can't answer or require more detail. I have put in there my email address, and we have Dennis King with us today and Ali Lopez from the SBDC, who would welcome any contact from you. Oh, welcome back. Thanks, Julie. No, that's fine.
Zoom doesn't like me today, I guess.
We're all members of that club.
Sorry about that. Let me see if I can pull it up really quickly again and share. Just to talk about the second draw loans. Is that showing? I've got. Okay. I'm going to try this again. So second, I'll try talking while I'm trying to maneuver mechanics. The second draw loans are largely the same, but you have slightly different eligibility criteria. So I think when I cut off, I was saying that you need to have utilized all of the funds from the first draw loan that you had. So you don't have to complete the forgiveness process in order to apply, but you do need to have used the funds. And so in theory, I like to tell people that, you know, if you never applied the first time around and now you want to, because the program is, you know, subject to availability of funding, but is open for at least 3 months, if you applied this week for a loan, spent the funds in 8 weeks, you could be eligible to apply for a second draw loan under this in this 3-month period that the program is open at the moment. So it is mathematically possible for someone to apply for a first draw and a second draw loan under this iteration of PPP. Let me try one more time to share if it'll cooperate. Okay. Okay. I don't know, are you seeing the slide?
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
We have that.
Okay. So the second draw loans, the other caveat on second draw is that it is for the size standard is now 300 employees. So no matter what business you are in, you have to have less than 300 employees. And there's also this concept of reduction in gross receipts. So we are going to ask you to demonstrate that you have received at least or experienced at least a 25% reduction in your gross receipts between 2019 and 2020. This is based on quarters. So there's 2 different ways to look at this. The easiest way is to kind of look at your overall gross receipts for 2019 and then again for 2020. And if across the board you've experienced a 25% reduction in 2020, that's really easy, right? You can easily show that you have a 25% reduction. But for many businesses that maybe started the year off very slowly, because perhaps they were closed or other issues, and then maybe picked up as the year went on and actually, you know, closed the year with stronger sales, you might want to do a quarter by quarter comparison. So, and that means for the calendar year quarters, compare 2019 and 2020. And if as long as at least in one quarter you experience this 25% reduction, you can also qualify for the second draw loan. So again, I would start looking at the full year, and if you don't have the 25% reduction, then go break it out quarter by quarter and compare first quarter 2019 to first quarter 2020, etc. The second draw loans are also of a maximum of $2 million on this loan. For most businesses, the amount you're eligible for, the calculation still applies. It's basically 2.5 times your average monthly payroll. And you can pick whether you want to use your payroll from 2019 or 2020, whichever is most advantageous to you. There is a new caveat here. If you are in the food accommodation and food sector, it means your business has a NAICS code which starts with 72. You can use the 3.5 times your monthly average payroll as your calculation. And there is a separate form for these second draw loans, and that is available on our website as well. So I just want to point out that there is a new application for this time around for the first draw loans, and for the second draw loans. And then we do have some new guidance documents. They're numbered sequentially this time around, so it makes it a little easier. The first interim final rule, it talks about PPP in general, and it incorporates all the new legislation and is kind of the comprehensive look at PPP. The second interim final rule focuses on the second draw loans, and there are some examples in there, so you might want to take a look at that if you are a candidate for the second draw loans. I'll go through this part pretty quickly since I know we want to get to questions. Just a reminder, we kind of already talked about this. The forgiveness side of things is the same. We're looking to have you demonstrate you spend at least 60% of your proceeds on payroll costs and no more than 40% of your loan proceeds on the non-payroll costs. The forgiveness process, I did want to just mention this for a moment. The forgiveness process is obviously still going on for people who got their PPP loans last year. If you are one of those who hasn't submitted your forgiveness application yet, you may want to wait another week or two, because SBA is going to be putting out additional information on forgiveness. And so you have time. You don't have to rush into applying for forgiveness right away. You actually have 10 months from the date that your covered period ended. So if you have not yet applied, you might want to wait. If you have applied or are in the process and still want to apply, you may also do that as well. I would just ask you, the forms have not been updated yet, so please, when you're filling out the forgiveness form, please do not subtract your EIDL advance amount. You can note it on the form, but please do not subtract it, because this new legislation no longer requires us to subtract the EIDL advance amounts from the PPP forgiveness. So we will no longer be doing that. And for anybody who already applied for forgiveness and the EIDL advance was taken out, we will be going back and reimbursing the lenders. So that process is going to take a little bit of time, so please be a little patient with us, but we are going back and they're going to reimburse the lenders the full amount. The process works the same, as that you still will send your forgiveness application package to the borrower, or excuse me, to the lender, and the lender will do the review, and the lender will make a decision on what's eligible for forgiveness or what's not eligible for forgiveness. The lender then will send information into SBA, and SBA has 90 days or so to review that information and remit payment back to the lender. So if 100% of the loan is forgiven, SBA will pay the lender, and the lender will notify you that all is well and your loan was forgiven. If for some reason a portion of the loan was not forgiven, the lender will then let you know what portion was not forgiven and will provide any information on the term loan that follows. So this is a note that there are 3 types of forgiveness application forms, but also there is a new application form coming soon. This will be for loans that are $150,000 or less. So this is another reason why I say you may want to wait another week or 2 until SBA has a chance to put these forms out. And then you can see that the process might become even more streamlined and a little bit easier to manage. And then just quickly, I'll show you some of the resources. I can also try to type some of this into the chat. Email is a great way to reach us. Also, if you haven't signed up for our newsletter, our email newsletter, you might want to do so. That way we can push this information out to you as it becomes available as well. And then ways to connect, with our resource partners, some of whom are on the phone with us today. So I am going to stop sharing my screen. Let's see. Okay. Hopefully come back. So
very good, Julie. Thank you very much.
To field questions.
As you were giving the presentation, I was frantically typing away as many answers as I could to Q&A. Okay. But I have to confess there were a few questions I thought I'll skip that and bring them back for you. So I felt a bit of a coward. But we do have quite a few. We do have quite a few questions. Some really interesting ones on if you're a self-employed person, as distinct from someone with a legal structure like an S Corp or an LLC, and how the rules play out. Would it be fair to say that for self-employed people with the second draw, it's broadly the same rules as the first draw, or is there something in there you think you should highlight to us that the self-employed should be aware of or take note of?
From my understanding, the calculation's the same. So it's still the 2.5 times the average monthly payroll, which in that case would largely be looking at the revenue, the gross revenue from the business, because you don't have. Although I guess there is the case where there are some people who are self-employed with employees as well. So. I will direct people again to that document that is how to calculate your amount, PPP loan amount, because they do run through several of those scenarios, right, including self-employed and including somebody who might be a sole proprietor, but also has an employee or 2 as well, and where you grab the information in order to help you make those calculations from different spots on your tax returns, whether it's your Schedule C or whether it's other yes, information.
Dennis, Ali, is there any insight you have had from the first round of PPP for the self-employed and sole proprietor? Any thoughts to follow up there on Julie? Because we did, I think, have somewhere in the region of 2,500 PPP applications from individuals who were sole proprietors or self-employed when I downloaded the SBA data just recently. So it's a big number of people here in the city.
Okay.
We expect even more this time around. In large part, there was some early confusion about whether they qualified. And as they got the word, they got more interested. So I'm expecting that there'll be more applying this time.
Yes. I mean, the one area I felt nervous about, but I was trying to read through the regulations, was if you're a self-employed person, should you be applying for PPP or should you apply for the pandemic unemployment insurance? That seems to be quite an important choice for the person to make here in terms of the, if you like, the dollar value of what it is on offer to them through the federal government.
So I lost sound for you for a second there, Victor, okay. But I don't know if everybody did or if I'm special there, but that goes back to one of my original points, is that I really encourage businesses, and leverage Dennis and his team for this process. Sit down with someone and run some numbers, right? Do some calculations looking at PPP, since you kind of know how that's structured, looking at, the pandemic unemployment insurance, or, the grant program, or anything else that's out there, and say, which is most advantageous to me? I understand, PPP sounds attractive because it's a forgivable loan, but you can't get PPP and unemployment at the same time. So some people might have gotten more money out of unemployment than they would have gotten from PPP. So it does
Yes.
behoove you to take some time and look at your specific situation and figure out what makes the most sense for you.
Absolutely, yeah.
Hey, Vic,
Bianca.
I just wanted to know if I could flag a couple questions. Or were
Go for it.
Were you okay? I have someone here who's curious about their back pay and rent.
Yes.
Landlords are still sending certified default letters. Do we calculate those rental payments in our application even though they haven't paid yet?
Well, I think that's a complex question, but when you're in, there's a scenario A and scenario B. So scenario A is you completed the loan forgiveness form and you've identified the period of time within which you're claiming that you've used the PPP loan, and you can use part of that PPP loan for the purposes of paying rent. And of course, what government is trying to do here is avoid a kind of double counting of the same period. So it's important, if you're going to apply for a second round of PPP and you're considering your rent period is not the same as the rent period you had under the first draw. I think that's a pretty fundamental distinction. Happy to go into more detail about that, because ultimately when you apply for loan forgiveness, you'll have to put the dates in of the 8-week period that you're using during 2020 for that purpose. Julie, correct me if I'm wrong, but essentially with the second round of PPP, there's more flexibility now about the 8-week period that the applicant can kind of choose which 8 weeks they want to kind of measure the use of the loan and then what they're claiming against the loan in the form of payroll and rent.
Yeah,
So
well, it's my understanding the start date stays the same. So it's the date the funds are dispersed to you. So that starts your covered period. But if you want to use it over the following 8 weeks, you may, but you can extend it up to the 24 weeks. So some people need more than the 8 weeks. Some people took the full 24. Some people did something in between. So you have the flexibility in how you extend out those payments, but it's still my understanding that the start date is still the date the loan is dispersed to you.
Yeah. So in theory, the date the loan was dispersed could not be the same date that would be covered by the original loan forgiveness period of round one.
Correct. They will be separate and distinct.
They would be separate and distinct. So provided people, I mean, the other piece of advice I would say to someone asking that question is check in with someone like Dennis and Ali if you need technical advice. Check in with your CPA or tax preparer or the person that advised you first time round so that you're clear about the dates that you're using and what you're claiming the PPP for. Right.
And we'll see. I'm not expecting this part of the forgiveness language to change, but I always put the caveat out there because the forms are changing a little bit, that it's during your covered period, the expenses that you can include, the non-payroll expenses, are the things that were either paid or incurred. So it doesn't have to be both. It can be either or. So if you had rent that was incurred that you had not yet paid, you could count that as a covered expense. Or similarly, if it's a bill that came due and you paid it during your covered period, but it covered electricity, for example, covered the prior month, but you paid it during your covered period, similarly, that can be included. So again, it's incurred or paid.
Got it. And you did say, I think, that you're expecting the SBA to publish next week the revised loan forgiveness form.
Yeah, I don't know if it'll hit next week, but within the next couple of weeks for sure. It's something that's being worked on. They wanted to get the applications out first, and then the forgiveness piece is the secondary.
Absolutely, that makes perfect sense. I was just trying to think out loud that maybe the city with perhaps Dennis and Ali, we could host a separate webinar on the issue of just loan forgiveness, the new regulations, what do they mean? And we could perhaps do some worked examples of self-employed business, a small business, a sole proprietor or an S Corp with a couple of $1 million of turnover, just to illustrate how this works, and maybe invite a bank to sort of give their take on it as well. What do you think, Dennis? Do you think that would be helpful to put on a
Yes,
loan forgiveness webinar?
That would be excellent.
Okay.
Yeah, we've done it in the past.
Okay, very good.
Especially as the new forms become available.
Yeah, yeah. In the interest of simplification, I think is going to be the buzzword here, isn't it? Bianca, any more questions?
Yeah, and I'll keep it general. Folks are having a lot of questions about payroll. So could you go over again how payroll is determined, who you use payroll, and maybe a bit for some of the folks why one would choose 2020 over 2019?
Okay, for the second draw loan, sure. So payroll is it's a broader term than just, you know, salary. It can include obviously the salary or any sort of compensation that's paid to yourself and or your employees. Also can include benefits that you pay on behalf of your employees. So for example, if you offer health insurance, and so the health insurance premium costs can be included in the overall payroll cost, as can state and local taxes on compensation. You cannot include the federal taxes, but you can include the state and local taxes. So you know, the quick and dirty way to think about this is you add all of that up for the year and you get a number. If you divide that number by 12, that would give you your average monthly payroll costs. And then you multiply that number by 2.5, and that would give you your amount that you're eligible for under PPP. So you might want to do that equation under utilizing your 2019 data and then your 2020 data, and you likely will get two different results, right, when you run those numbers. What I mean by what's more advantageous to you is it really depends on what's happening in your business, in your situation. If you're in a business, because we've had this resurgence with the pandemic and the health departments have, you know, we've shut down more businesses or really limited how some businesses can operate. Even though you could get more money if you used your 2019 numbers, for example, you might not want to because you might be afraid you can't utilize it all in the right percentages, that 60-40 split, in order to have it forgiven. But similarly, maybe you do, you know, maybe you do have a need for getting the larger amount. And so maybe if your 2019 numbers reveal a larger loan amount that you'd be eligible for, maybe you do want to utilize those numbers because you have a plan for how you can utilize those loan proceeds and still meet, you know, that 60-40 split. Again, this might be another time where you want to talk to one of the business advisors because I think at the end of the day, the appeal of this program, right, is to have that loan forgiven. So that should be foremost in your mind when you're making the decision about how much money you would like to get in the second draw.
Julie, could you repeat that formula again? The payroll over a year divided by 12 times 2.5?
Sure, it's adding up all of those payroll costs, so the salaries, the compensation, the benefits, like the, you know, health insurance premiums, for example, that the employer paid, and then and state and local taxes on compensation. If you add that all up for the year, divide by 12, that gives you your monthly average, and then you take that number and times it by 2.5, and that gives you roughly what you're eligible for under PPP.
I think that a very simple but very helpful formula for folks.
Would someone be able to outline for us again any conflicts or no conflicts? So for example, many folks have asked, if I applied for a PPP, may I apply for EIDL? If I apply for PUA, may I apply for PPP? And then employee retention credit as well. And I think there's also, and since we're on this topic, there's also some state hiring tax credits. How do these programs work with one another?
Right, I think we're gonna have to build a matrix. So diagram it, right? The Venn diagram or something. But yeah. It's unfortunately not as straightforward as an answer as I'm sure people would like. So the general principle when you're talking about, at least from the SBA side and disaster assistance, is that you usually can't what we call double dip. So get two different programs and utilize them at the same time for the same purpose. That's the general concept. That said, you could apply for PPP and EIDL and receive both. We just ask that you don't use the funds, again, for the same expenses during the same time period. Super simple way to distinguish between those two is to use 100% of PPP for your payroll expenses and then use EIDL for everything else. Or you can, work it out differently, but that's one quick way. I do know to be cognizant of the new shuttered venue operators grant that's coming out. I do know you will not be eligible to PPP and this grant, the shuttered venue grant you won't be eligible for both. That I do know. As far as some of the state programs, I probably don't have all of them committed to memory. I do believe, and Bianca, you can jump in and help me on this one for some of the state programs. I think the latest state grant, you can have been a recipient for EIDL and PPP. Also, for some other programs, I know like with the iBank, they were limited to people who were not eligible for EIDL and PPP. I don't even know if that one's still operating at the moment. So it is a good idea to look, and for some of the more localized programs, I would definitely take a look to see if they have any restrictions on how they're offering the funds. Some cities, for example, have decided they're creating pots of money, grants and other programs specifically for the people who weren't eligible for EIDL or PPP. Others are saying no, anybody can apply. So there's not probably a one rule that applies for everything. I would say take a minute and look at what you're hoping to apply for and see what happens. We mentioned already the unemployment and PPP, you cannot do both at the same time. And I know there's probably some others out there that I'm missing.
It's a big topic area, isn't it? Yeah.
You can't double dip as well for if you get a California relief grant, you're allowed to get an EIDL and PPP, but just not use the funds for the same thing.
Thank you, Ali. That's a really important point, isn't it? So I always say to business owners when I speak to them on the phone, keep some good records of everything that you've applied for, you've received, how you've used it. If in doubt, always talk to a CPA or a tax preparer, or if you can't afford one, always go and talk to a technical assistance provider like Dennis and Ali to get some advice on this, but always keep records so that you don't by mistake. You'd be surprised number of businesses I've had a conversation with that said, I didn't realize I had to do it that way or this way. So please take advice before you make a decision. Interesting, can you apply for PPP and EIDL if you didn't have an EIDL last year?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can apply for both. Yeah, you just can't use them at the same time for the same purpose. But yeah, absolutely. And I think for a lot of businesses, especially those who do have employees, it's pretty easy to use up all of the PPP money, especially now since you can go up to 24 weeks. Use it all on salary expenses and then use EIDL for all the other expenses you have.
That's a really helpful point. Thank you, Julie. Yeah. So really, I mean, the secret to this is knowing your cash flow, knowing your profit and loss, and knowing your rate of spend, and being able to sort of say, right, if I'm going to get this level of PPP, where do I want to place it in the 2020 scenario to see where is the right point to secure the maximum forgiveness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think people, there's programming available and they want to, rush to take advantage of it. And I certainly understand that. But I do think this round of PPP is going to grow at a slower pace. So for the good or the bad of that, I guess there's people probably on both sides of the fence for that one. But the one thing to understand is obviously we started it out limiting the types of lenders who could submit. And that was, again, a purposeful decision in order to help some of the smaller businesses and others who maybe felt excluded or didn't get by the time they figured it out, the program had ended and they weren't able to apply, to give them that opportunity before it starts to open up. But even when it's opened up to all lenders, the process is going to go a little bit more slowly. I should always preface and say people have a little bit of patience. The lenders, when they submit their application or the packet to SBA for the PPP loan, SBA is going to not automatically issue a loan number this time. We're moving, we're kind of flipping the process around. So when the lender submits the information to SBA, SBA is going to do the identity check and the verification of that borrower on the front end before we give a loan authorization number to the lender. So that is going to add another, couple of days to the process. But it's taking what we're doing on the back end and kind of moving it to the front end of this process. But that'll also slow this down a little bit, so there won't be this, almost last time there was almost this feeding frenzy of trying to get all the loans into the portal at the same time. So this will hopefully alleviate some of that as well by flipping.
Is that a kind of fraud check just to make sure everyone's authentic and taking the pressure off the banks a bit? Sure. Okay.
That's definitely a part of it.
So the kind of key messages here are really that what we're trying to convey is kind of business owners should be getting prepared now, not wait. Talk to if you had a first draw PPP with a lender, talk to them now, really. Find out if they're going to be offering a second draw, if they have a date in mind, or if they've got any particular requirements. Check the regulations, Julie, that you've been referring to in some detail, and we'll be able to send everything out either late this afternoon, my colleague who's recording this, with all the slide deck plus the links. I was just trying to do a quick bit of research, Julie, because I found your information on the SBA website very helpful with the download of all the lenders in California. What I don't know is if you'll be updating it to show which ones will be engaging in the second round, because I know we've had a couple of questions of people asking that.
Right.
And I don't know how to answer it, to be honest.
We've had, I'm hoping, I'm not sure what out of headquarters, what information they might put out as far as especially national lenders that have already expressed the statement that they're going to participate in this round. We've been behind the scenes trying to talk to some of our lenders and banking partners and see if they're willing to participate in this next round, if they're able to do it right away, or if they need a longer ramp up period. There's lots of factors. Because unlike the first time around, we now have banks that are not only going to have to deal with loan applications, but they're still dealing with forgiveness as well. So they've got both sides of it on their plate. And so it's a bigger lift. It's a heavier lift for our lenders this time around. So on a happy note, just informally through conversation, it seems like the vast majority of them are going to participate in this round. So I hope that we'll be able to put out some, maybe some additional information. In the meantime, it's a tool on our website, SBA.gov website, called Lender Match.
Yes.
And it should have a checkbox for PPP. And it's not a guarantee of funding, but it is a way to kind of put yourself out there and say, I'm interested in PPP. And the lenders that are participating, it's a way to be kind of matched up with some that are taking applications and participating. So it's not a perfect tool, but it is a tool out there to help you kind of find some lenders if you don't have a bank in mind. If you do have a lending relationship and you're not certain if they're going to participate in this next round, first thing I would do is look at their website. A lot of lenders are already going out there and messaging their intent to participate in this next round. Some of these lenders, as we know, create automated or online applications. So they take the paper one that you can find off our website and they translate it into an online one. So you might want to check and see if your bank is utilizing this online process that they're creating or is going to accept paper applications as well. So you can do some of that fact finding now, especially if you already have a banking relationship that you want to continue.
Absolutely. When I last downloaded your SBA data, Julie, last week, I noticed there were 11,000 businesses that received a PPP loan under $150,000, and 2,200 businesses received a loan over $150,000. So it's a lot of businesses here in the city, but I did see within that, I think about 20% of those businesses received their loan from one of the new online fintech lenders. So is there a question here that if you're unsure, it's a good time now in the next few days to do a bit of shopping around, do a bit of research, see what's out there, have a look?
Sure. You know, the adding the online lenders to the mix was a new thing for SBA. They don't traditionally engage in SBA lending. So, but it was also part of the attempt to be as broad as possible to make as many avenues and channels available to all potential borrowers. So if you did not have a banking relationship, you know, an online lender could be a viable option because they don't have pre-existing relationships for the most part. They don't have depository relationships and things. So that could be a viable option for people who don't have a banking relationship or are maybe not happy with their banking relationship for whatever reason. So that's another option for sure.
Sure. Is it also fair to say that it's free to apply, or can some banks levy a charge on their customers? That came up this morning.
Yeah, they should not be charging. You're not allowed to charge. If you find someone who's charging you, please let me know, because one, it could be a fraudulent situation that we need to shut down, or in best case, just a misinformed lender. But no, they are not allowed to charge for this. They're not allowed to charge you a fee of any sort for this loan.
Thank you. Really good question from a restaurant owner in this. Do you think we ought to be doing something special just for the 72 series NAICS code businesses, so that we've got some very clear messages there for people? I looked on the city's business tax database, and there were 2,900 businesses registered with the city with a 72 series NAICS code. So I was thinking maybe we ought to, you know, I'm really looking at Dennis and Ali as I'm chatting about this, rather than you, Julie, but maybe there's something we put on just for the accommodation and food services industry, because they've had a really tough time. And I noticed it's 3.5 times the payroll for people in that 72 series NAICS code. So there's a lot of opportunity here for the restaurant and industry in particular to try and recoup some money and be able to use it to keep going.
Victor,
Sure, absolutely.
We did notice, Victor, in the last program that we coordinated with you and the city of San Jose was the small business rent relief program. And a quarter of those that applied and a quarter who received those grants were from the food industry.
Great, that's good.
There is a significant need that's out there.
Yep, okay. I think we've hit 2 o'clock. I was going to say, on behalf of the city, thank you very much, Julie, for making the time available. Thank you, Bianca, Dennis, and Ali for participating. I was going to stay on and just work my way through the Q&As, but we've got 130 people with us still. And I was just going to say, everything we've said today has been recorded and it will be made available. I've got to check with my colleague behind the scenes who's putting all that together, but we would like to get that out to all the participants and businesses who registered either late this afternoon or tomorrow morning. We've got additional resource. I've got the list of all the Draw 1 lenders for California available. I've got the FinTech list that I searched online this morning to make available as well. And then I was taking some notes, Julia, kind of top tips notes from what you were saying, and I was going to put that out there as well. So anyone who's registered or participated today, you will be getting all the material. I didn't want anyone to get stressed that they missed some of the information that you were presenting, but I'd like to give you, Julie, any final thoughts or comments before we wrap up.
Sure. Yeah, and I can stay for a few minutes, but I did want to just let people know that, you know, this is the first wave of information, even with regards to PPP, first draw and second draw under this new legislation. You know, we will continue to be putting information out. So If you have a specific question, you can obviously contact us, contact one of our resource partners, and to the extent that we don't know, we will certainly strive to get that information to you, or it could be amongst this tranche of information we know is being worked on in DC right now and is forthcoming. So please stay plugged in with us so that we can continue to push out information and you can continue to receive it in a timely manner. And just, we know this is a lot to absorb, and you know, everybody might have a slightly unique and different situation. So that's why we do really encourage you to leverage the resources you do have available to you, and let us, you know, try to help you get through this to the best of our ability, and make sure you get connected to all of these different resources.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Julie. Thank you again, panel members, for giving up your time to be with us today to help businesses through this. It's a very important time. I'm going to stay here and just work my way through some of the questions, but I think we've kind of reached our time period that we had. Let me see. Great. If you're happy to stay on a few minutes, we could just go through some of the questions.
Yeah. I saw one pop up about, I think it said, asked if a C Corp was eligible for PPP. And the answer is yes, as long as it's not a publicly traded company. That has been, the rules have changed to exclude publicly traded companies, but your form of business is fine. You can be a C Corp, S Corp, LLC, partnership, sole proprietor, all of them are eligible.
We've got a couple of EIDL questions. Will there be a second round of EIDL? Was one question. Not sure. I've not heard of that.
Yeah, I get asked that question daily.
Oh, okay.
My response is I hope so, but I can't make any promises just yet. I am telling people to maybe just table that for a couple of weeks, because we might discover in a couple of weeks' time that is indeed going to either reopen for, I mean, it's still open for first-time applicants, but there might be a path for people to either apply for a second loan or have their original loan modified upwards. But
watch
you know,
this space.
you can exactly watch this space coming soon. I can definitely tell you that, you know, myself and my colleagues around the country are being big advocates for you in this particular space to increase the amount of EIDL loan dollars that are available to you all.
Excellent. The other EIDL question was around if someone's not sure what happened to their application, they didn't receive any documentation. What's the best way for them to try and get some answers, do you think, here, Julie?
So if you've heard nothing from SBA at all, you can go ahead and email us in the district office, that sfomail@sba.gov email address, and we can contact the disaster team and try to get a status update to see where it is in the process. You can also go ahead and call the disaster customer service line directly as well. That was on the last page of my slide deck. It's I should still have that number memorized, but I haven't had to repeat it in a while. But it's you can call and ask them as well, and they could maybe look it up for you. So that's one way we can get a status check. And then depending on what the status check yields, what results, we can then you know, further advise you. Sometimes sometimes you'll then get a request that they want some additional documentation. And we can try to help you with that process if that's what's required.
Sure. I mean, the SBA has really built its internal infrastructure, hasn't it, for the EIDL program over 2020, from where you started to where you are today. So you're in a good position here, aren't you, to do this?
We definitely, you know, had to scale exponentially overnight. So it's it definitely was a process. So I won't say that we're necessarily the most well-oiled machine yet, but we're definitely, you know, it's an all hands on deck process that we're trying to get information out and get the updates and get people through the process as, you know, as best as we are able.
Yes. Yeah, sure. Okay, let's have a quick look at some final questions.
Vic, I have to dash to a 2 o'clock meeting, but thank you.
Pleasure, Dennis. Good to see you again.
Certainly, we'd like to be able to convey to our business listeners is that we really appreciate them being in business. We wish them great success. We don't charge for our services. They don't need to do this alone. All of us are on their side and rooting for them.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dennis. I appreciate that. Very good. Look forward to seeing you soon.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm going to wrap up here and say thank you very much. I couldn't quite get to everyone's questions, but I'll work through them offline and try and post some of those questions and answers in the feedback that goes out. Let me see if there's any more. We've got 100 people still with us. It's an interesting one. Julie, I started my business in November 2019. What revenue should I consider for applying for a PPP? My answer to that was any period in 2020. Would that be fair?
So for the first draw loan, we'll take a look at, well, definitely, you have the 2 months in 2019, but then you presumably have all of 2020. Granted that the numbers, the data might not be that strong, but you do have numbers to draw from. So we can look at, depending, I'm not sure what you might have been able to accomplish in, 2 months that you were open in 2019, but we definitely can look at both years. You can also, utilize, if you read into the rules, I didn't incorporate it into the slide deck, but for businesses that were seasonal or had other kinds of constraints like this, you opened, later in the year, you'll have a bifurcated time frame initially, and there's some guidance in the rule too that addresses those scenarios.
Brilliant, thank you. When reporting the quarter 25% reduction, can you just report that quarter? My understanding was you could pick any of the 4 quarters in 2020 to compare to 2019. Is that right?
You can. You only have to demonstrate that at least one quarter you had the 25% reduction in revenue. I would be prepared though to have, just a simple 1-pager or something that shows 19 versus 20 quarter by quarter breakdown of your revenue, because the lenders may ask to see something a little more globally, and then knowing they're honing in on, quarter 2 or whatever quarter is applicable. But I would be ready to have all that information to present to a lender if they ask for it in the application process.
Question I really forgot to come back to. Does the PPP only apply to 2020, or can it be used for 2021 as well?
I'm not sure.
I assume that's for loan forgiveness purposes.
Yeah, for PPP, if you've already applied in 2020 and got a loan, obviously you're using 2020 covered period, but for forgiveness purposes, yes, now your covered period would be in 2021. If you're talking about eligibility, 2021 just started, so you wouldn't really have any data just yet. So yeah, you need to look backwards.
So could it be either or both? Could it say the business used their first draw PPP and let's say the period up to the end of, I don't know, July, August of 2020. So that was the forgiveness period. And then September 2020 onwards, could they use that period for loan forgiveness, or would it have to be 2021? I wasn't sure.
It's not retroactive, so it's for whatever period, the covered period of the loan. So if they're applying now for a second draw, it's going to be from, whatever date they get the loan dispersed to them for at least the next 8 weeks.
Got it.
Up to 24.
So in truth, businesses may want to sort of stretch this out into 2021 and see what period that, from an 8-week to a 24-week period, they want to then choose once they can see what the loan forgiveness regulations mean in detail.
Right. It's really unique to each business, right? Because some people want to leverage the PPP funds solely for payroll. They don't necessarily want to leverage it for some of the non-payroll costs. So they will stretch it out beyond the 8 weeks because you get, 2.5 times your monthly payroll average. So, but for some businesses, they're intending to use maybe just get to that 60% in payroll. And then they really want to leverage the rest of the 40% of the proceeds for those other costs. So I think it behooves you to go into this with a plan of how you think you want to use the funds. So that way you can make some good decisions along the way about how you're approaching this, and how, obviously then need to track everything as well and document it so you can demonstrate on the back end how you use those funds.
Got it. Yeah, very good. Thank you. Very good. The webinar tomorrow for the shuttered venue grant, I think I heard you say, but could you just check, will a recording be made available of that for people who may not be able to sign in, given the demand you have?
Yes, I am told that it will be recorded, and I am told that if you go to register and it is full and you're asked to put your name on a wait list, that if you're on that wait list, I am told you will automatically receive a link to the recording as well.
Thank you. I did talk to colleagues in our Office of Cultural Affairs in the city, and they were, I know a colleague was intending to join the webinar tomorrow, and I think there will be information coming out from that the city will be sending to various businesses and organizations and non-profits that are involved in entertainment. So do watch this space, and I know San Jose Economy, which is our main online kind of news information service, will be producing information to put on there for everyone that's associated with live entertainment and who may be interested in knowing more about the shuttered venue grant.
Yeah, and I do expect this is the first, piece of information that's being made available. There will definitely be a lot more information to follow, and it's not my expectation that they have this webinar tomorrow and then Friday it's open. I think we've still got at least a week, if not 2, before this program is open for application. So there's definitely going to be more opportunities to receive the information about this program. So I hope people don't necessarily feel like they're disadvantaged if they can't listen in tomorrow, but there'll definitely be more information coming out, and certainly more information will be available on the SBA website when it's ready.
Excellent. Okay, I'll keep an eye out for that. Let me see. I'm just looking at scrolling and looking at the questions and answers. We covered the question of reduction in gross receipts. You can look at any quarter in 2020 for that purpose to compare with 2019. Does the PPP loan conflict with the employee retention credit? I thought the answer for that was no, it doesn't conflict. Is that your view, Julie?
The retention credit, I'm trying to remember now. I think that came around the first time. And I don't know if you can, I have to go back and look because I don't want to misspeak.
Yeah, understood. Sometimes it's the short questions that are the most difficult, aren't they? Yeah. Very good. Okay, a business for 2 months in 2019. We've covered that one, and in 2020. Second PPP, do we need to submit the same payroll proof as we did the first time?
For the second draw PPP, on the front end, you will be showing your calculations, and you will likely have to show, tax return, like whatever year you're basing it on, 2019 or 2020. Obviously, you don't have 2020 tax returns prepared yet, but you should able to produce your financial statements for the year. Even if it's in a draft copy, I would be ready with those. But I don't think you're going to have to itemize your employees if that's what you're asking, but definitely on the back end. And I would also be prepared with the second draw to make sure you have all your first draw loan information available and ready. You might not have to physically submit it, but have it ready and available, especially if you're not using the same lender for any reason. Then they're definitely going to ask you some questions. If you're using the same lender, presumably they have a lot of that information already available to them, but be ready with it just in case.
Thank you. That's great advice. Last question. For calculating the loan amount, if you're self-employed, can you include medical insurance or 401k benefits when you calculate the average monthly payroll? I wasn't sure about that.
If you're self-employed and it's just you that you're counting, the answer I believe is no, because you're not actually going to calculate payroll separately. You're going to look at your Schedule C and your receipts for the year.
Right.
So it's a slightly different calculation if you're looking at just you with no employees attached. So there's definitely some scenarios in the sheet that I was referencing that you can take a look at, and they walk you through what information to grab. And then, if you want to read the lengthy policy explanation as to why that's different, then that's also available in the rule. Okay,
very good. I think we've covered everything here. Some people have already been contacting their banks. Haven't had any updates. My answer to that is please go back to them. Bianca, sorry, hi.
Okay, hi. Just wanted, there was a question. I don't know where they are at this point, but where can folks go to find out which lenders are they can go to currently, and which ones they can anticipate going to in the in the near future?
I've just produced the list. I took the download from the SBA. The SBA produced a document, Julie, you'll correct me if I'm wrong here, that listed every lender by state. It's a very large document.
From last year, yeah, from the prior round, yes.
From the prior round, and I looked at it, and I've cut and pasted the state of California into a separate document. So I took that list and just basically chunked out California, and I've got that ready to send out to everyone.
And to clarify, do folks need to be existing clients with those? Are those folks that small business owners can reach out to if they're not currently clients?
Well, that's at the discretion of the lender as to whether they're only serving their existing clients or they're prepared to accept new clients.
Yeah, and there's a mixture of them. So sometimes, unfortunately, even for us at SBA, sometimes it's just a matter of calling them and asking them what they're offering at this point in time. But like I said, the appetite, just generally speaking, from a lot of the lenders we converse with, is that they do intend to participate in this round. And, some of them are waiting for some more information from SBA, and, others are ramping up and getting ready. There's a lot of stuff that the banks do behind the scenes as well to get ready for this process too. So I do think a lot of them are doing that right now. And to the best that we're able to provide any lists or anything, we will try to do that. But we do have from last year the banks that were enrolled in the program, so to speak. So these were ones that didn't traditionally participate with SBA that were approved for this. They're still considered approved to offer the loans. It's just the secondary question of whether they will be participating in this round of PPP.
Got it. I mean, certainly I've been covering the articles that you see in the business press, the business sections of news, some of the big people like Forbes and Inc. and the others, and certainly seems that there's a large measure of continuity here, that a lot of the financial institutions wish to continue with PPP into round two. But business owners should, as I say, do their research now, isn't it? And be clear kind of from Monday onwards who you're going to go with.
And, some lenders might be participating, but they might need a longer ramp up period than some others. So, if because I don't know the exact date, but let's just say hypothetically that SBA opened up the loan portal to all the other participating lenders on Thursday of next week. Some banks might be saying, hey, I'm ready to participate, but I'm going to wait till Monday because I still need to do some of the behind the scenes work and things that they need to get to be prepared. So it is always best to reach out to the lender or consult their website. I know a lot of them have been really good about keeping updates on their website. So.
Very good. But if you want to go with a CDFI, if you're an existing customer of a CDFI with a PPP loan from a CDFI, you can go now, can't you? You can go.
Sure. Yeah, if they're ready to go, absolutely.
So I've got a list of the 8 in the Bay Area CDFIs as well to go out, so you can check. But I do know each CDFI was making its own decisions, and I don't know what those decisions are in relation to taking on new customers.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a mixture of responses there as well. And then the MDIs, there is a national list of who MDIs are. And
Right.
I know last night I was starting to kind of filter through to find the California based, and there are a number of them in the Bay Area as well.
Oh, that's interesting. MDI being the acronym for?
Minority Depository Institution.
Very good. That's the bonus prize.
Yes.
Very good. So as Bianca was saying in the chat, there are quite a few options at the moment open to small businesses here in California. You can apply for a PPP if you're already with a CDFI, but soon the second draw will be out, as we've just been talking. If you haven't had any idea or idle loan, you can apply for one of those. Same rules, same criteria apply. We've then got the California Small Business Relief Grant that has its round 1 closure today. No, that's the loan program that's ongoing that the governor and is kind of underwriting with a number of CDFIs like the Opportunity Fund and others, and Pacific Community Ventures are engaged with. And then we've got the California Rebuild Business Grant Fund. So the key point here, I think Bianca was making, was that none of these programs are incompatible, but you need to be clear how you stagger the use of the funds, and then ultimately how you're going to demonstrate the accountability of that to maximize their benefit and maximize the forgiveness periods, and understand that really is a key point here, isn't it?
Right, absolutely. And that's why that exercise of knowing what you need financing for. I mean, is it largely to support your people, your employees, or is it largely to support other things, or a combination thereof? And once you understand that, that can help inform you for which of these programs, and maybe when. Some of it might be a timing issue.
Yeah. Okay, I think this has been great. Julie, thank you very much. Thank you, Bianca. Thank you, Ali. Please pass on my thanks to Dennis as well. We'll be running, I think, another event probably in the next week to 10 days once we have more information, particularly around loan forgiveness when that comes out. I'll try and invite on some banks to give a view about how they see it from a lender perspective, that business owners may want to ask questions of, get a sense of that. I can see we've got more information to put out to make sure everyone is as informed. The city's point of view is we just want to make sure as many businesses as possible can take advantage of these programs now and not feel left out or left behind. Thank you all very much.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good afternoon. Thank you all for the participants.
Everybody.
Take care. Thank
Bye,
you, Ali.
Bianca and Ali.
Bye, Julie.
Bye.